As far as glitches go, some of them, if you abuse them, can definitely ruin the game. But I think if you can kind of make them role or lore friendly, they can be beneficial to your gameplay. In the case of there's certain weapons as I show in this video that will just like you go into your crafting menu and you put one weapon on top of another sequentially, either by renaming it or something like that, or having them next to each other. Then, if you press both the scrap and the modify button, like almost right after each other, you'll scrap the first weapon on top, but you'll be able to take its mod and put on another weapon. And you kind of got to experiment with which mods are compatible with what weapons between each other. But sometimes it can lead to quite powerful effects. Like, as you can see, a minigun that has homing missiles, or a minigun that can shoot MIRVs from a Fat Man, or even like a flamer, as you see I made, that shoots nukes. There's no way to get it to use flamer fuel, unfortunately, but if you can dupe nukes, then maybe it wouldn't matter. But I think, nonetheless, that insofar as you can optimize your character, the Minutemen can be fun, because even though they don't really have personality or do anything, they represent an extension of you as the character, and they allow some latitude in roleplay. So, let's say with the Institute, you become head of it, and maybe all the other people in there hate you and they want to replace you with a synth or assassinate you. The effects of the Institute probably are not a good thing on the future, with like you not knowing who's a real person, people replaced, and everything like that. And just the runaway effects it could have with like AI. The Brotherhood, you feel like you're kind of living at the pleasure or the mercy of Elder Maxon. It can be like a hothead, and just like you're subjugating, I guess, the Commonwealth to their militaristic rule. They're not bad, but I'm just saying, like, in that case, you don't get as much freedom over what you do, despite the vertibird benefits. Then the Railroad, they solipsistically have an interest in synths and protecting synths and everything like that. Maybe that's a good thing, sure, but like they don't have the best interest of like leading the Commonwealth as a whole in mind. Even though the Minutemen had like a weak spine and everything, they have the potential to be reinvigorated and purpose towards the effect of leading the Commonwealth. So I think that you could like take your settlements and build them up, and take like settlers that pretty much have nothing. They come with pipe weapons, dirty clothes, and everything like that, disease. And you can use trade and basically use crafting and everything, resource gathering, to build the settlements up and kind of role play as if they're like their own cities, city states, all connected in like a league that form like their own civilization. Kind of like the NCR happened in the first game. Initially, it was just Shady Sands, the hub, and other places like Junktown, the Boneyard. But then they all joined in a federation to become the NCR. So I think that you could definitely like just kind of roleplay by building structures and facilities that kind of like make sort of like a full civilization. I don't think like the game really gives you the tools to do it though. You could kind of like also pretend that like some of your settlers are scientists, some are farmers, stuff like that, and stratify it. But suffice to say, I think like outfitting your settlers in armor and weapons and giving them better stuff makes it like you're making your own faction with like a fighting force. it's kind of hard to get them to work with power armor because it's not simple like the other games. It's this whole like vehicular mechanism. But maybe there are some cases like if you put them in like sentry positions, then you could have them wear power armor and replace it from time to time. The other thing about settlements is that you can place artillery batteries and maybe assign 5 settlers to 5 different batteries. And then if you're in the area, you can call a smoke grenade or a flare to shoot an artillery strike on an enemy. Not perhaps very practical, not the quickest way to do it, but it could be pretty cool just to like flex your muscle and cause all those explosions, because you can have it where you're in the valence of multiple settlements and cause like just numerous explosions to rain down. So for chems, for example, there's one called Agile Sludge Pack, which will increase your AP recovery to 20% AP per second, or 20 AP per second at 800 plus rads for 12 minutes. There's one called Buff Jet, which there are a variety of jet drug combinations that will give you, working effects. But you have to see how they combine with each other, how much you can stack them. Oftentimes in the games, if something has a constituent component in it, it may not stack. Like, you may not get the jet effect or buff out stacking with buff jet. But most significantly for damage boosting and sneak attack builds, whether it's melee or a Gauss rifle, is Calm X, which will give you a multiplier of sneak attack times 2 that I think works multiplicatively with whatever your sneak attack multiplier is for all your perks, or a companion perk like Deacon's perk. Now, in the non-combat side, you might want to look at charisma boosting, because like I said, if you get your charisma with unyielding up to 40, you can take settlers from one settlement while you have that temporarily boosted charisma and move them to another settlement and use this unnaturally buff charisma to break the normal settlement limits. Conversely, you can go to other settlements and then make another settlement have a large population. And this does have benefits with, like, you can farm more food. So, like, if you have, like, 40 settlers, maybe you could end up getting, like, 400 carrots per harvest. And then use those as, like, the input towards a farm where you farm rad stags, take their meat and farm yao guai, take their meat and farm death claws. There are practical effects of having a big settlement, but there are other effects, like the durable sludge pack increases damage by plus 100 at 800 plus rads. There's fire belly, which is significant. It will give you plus 30% damage below 25% health for 8 minutes. There's one called Fury, and this is significant for melee builds. There's a lot in the game that can benefit melee builds, even though by default in late game, they're kind of weak. Fury will give you plus 50% melee damage, and it consists, I believe, of Psycho and Nuka-Cola, and I think what is called a Blitz syringe. So if you get that syringe and you make it with those ingredients, you can make Fury. Now, there are other chems or medicines for survival mode, but they're more so for just fixing like issues. Med-X is not as good as in the other games because having 25% damage resistance isn't that great, but for poison resistance it is good if you run into like glowing sea stingwings. Significantly, Lorenzo Cabot will give you Mysterious Serum. You can also get a limited supply through like just the amount that's lying around the Cabot house. But you'll get this, lore-wise, it'll make you immortal, which is pretty cool. But it'll give you minus 10 rads for an hour. So you'll be able to walk through the glowing sea without Rad-X or anything and probably be alright. Now, there is Overdrive, which I discussed earlier, plus 25% damage and plus 25% critical chance. So even with a regular weapon like a Gauss rifle, this can be nice. But you can really get a lot of nice crits. And if you get a freezing effect, really benefit from that stun lock by having Overdrive. There's Psycho and Psycho Jet. I don't think they stack, but it's worth looking into. There's a strong sludge cocktail, which does 5 extra strength at 900 plus rads for 720 seconds. So as you can see from Far Harbor, you really get a lot of bonus from having a lot of radiation. Now, significantly, there is X-Cell, which will raise all your stats by 2, but it's quite rare. So if you find it, you might want to just be cheesy and just dupe it, because why would you want to have only one in the game? One thing that's worth considering as well is that with the gunner farm, you'll find numerous gunner brigadiers that will drop stealth boys. So you'll have the ability to have stealth everywhere you go. There are a couple optimizing choices or perks that are conferred upon you that require you to make certain story choices. One of them is in Far Harbor, choosing to destroy or save Acadia. When you save Acadia, you get an effect when you have less than 25% health. You get 1,000 extra damage resistance. Given everything I mentioned as of yet, I don't think this effect is as significant, because you can wear power armor or you can use Sentinel's armor and negate so much damage already that you effectively have maybe a 95% damage reduction for any given weapon used against you. The other effect is Destroyer of Acadia, and that gives you times 4 damage for anything when you have 25% or less health. So that both those effects last for 30 seconds, and the one that I think is better is Destroyer, because you will see a massive increase to your damage using that. There's another instance in Far Harbor where you have to make a choice, and I believe the choice that increases your damage the most is siding with the Children of Adam in the nucleus, because you get a perk called Crusader or Inquisitor of Adam, and it'll give you plus 10% damage with any given weapon for every 100 rads you have. So if you have 800 or 900 rads, better yet, let's say you could get it to where you're right above 20% health or whatever the threshold is for Destroyer of Acadia, and then let's say an enemy attacks you, you can proc Destroyer of Acadia and maybe Nerd Rage at the same time, and then you will be able to have effects from Rad Powered stacking for your melee weapons, Bloodied for your melee weapons, the Inquisitor of Adam, and Destroyer of Acadia all working in tandem. And additionally, you can reap those benefits for any weapon if you're using Destroyer of Acadia and the Inquisitor of Adam with stealth sniper builds with a Gauss rifle or an explosive minigun. Or a Gatling laser. You can see considerable damage increase by doing those things. Now, you have to consider whether it's worth it, because most people probably wouldn't make either of those choices, despite how people have their misgivings about Dima and Far Harbor being manipulative institute type person that ran away from the institute only to act like them. And most people wouldn't side with the fanatics of the Children of Adam and destroy the citizens of Far Harbor. So it's up to you, really. But the other choice is siding with raider gangs in Nuka-World. I believe that to optimize damage, you would have to side with the operators, because they give you a plus 25% critical chance or critical damage for sneak attacks, like adding to your damage. And then there's another perk with the pack that will increase your melee damage yet still. So those two increase your damage. The disciples merely give you like a bonus of like action point refresh whenever you kill an enemy, or I think even hit an enemy with melee weapons, but that's not as significant for maximizing your damage potential as the effects those two give. You're making a roleplay choice there too that entangles with your, Munchkin style optimization. You're siding with the Raiders, which pisses off Preston. You have to do some kind of like gambits where you start out and you try to recruit Preston and get all the benefits from him and still try to go through the Minutemen story and also be the Raider at the same time and get the bonuses there. And then the other thing is you're actively saying the disciples suck, which is true, but either way, you're making that choice to side with those two groups just so that you can increase damage. It sucks when you have to optimize and make RPG choices, but I mean, if you want to optimize, those are the things you'd have to do. As far as companions go, there is the issue with companions that if you put them in power armor can break, and this is why more often you see me using this set of sentinel armor and all that, because it's actually more effective than power armor, and power armor breaks. So on the subject of power armor, it's economically efficient to use T51 because when you repair it, it only requires mostly steel, whereas XO1 that I showcase here requires quite a bit of aluminum, which is a valuable and rare resource. So you don't want companions using up your aluminum with their power armor. Instead, you might want them having ballistic weave. Or you can use somebody like Paladin Dance, who has power armor in his own right that never breaks. But discussing companions, they have their base weapons, and their base weapons will do a certain amount of damage, infinite ammo. But you have other weapons you can give them that are better, but you'll have to supply them with ammo. In my opinion, for playstyle, you get bonuses for Lone Wanderer perk, bonus damage, and bonus health. I think it's health or carry weight. And you can still proc the perk if you have dog meat, so that's something to consider. But if you don't want those benefits, you can actually carry a robot companion with you, which is probably the best. They've got good DR, but more significantly, they're outfitted with really good weapons that you'd only have to produce once, and you don't have to give them ammo, like if you wanted to give your companions more powerful weapons. The powerful thing about this is that you can basically run around and have a robot with a sentry bot torso attached to shoot Fat Man missile salvos, which are probably the best, Fat Man. And then basically it says it's unstable and it'll break, but in my experience I've never had problems with it. Sometimes it shows it heating up with steam coming out of it, but that's an effective torso piece. Then it's a toss-up between the Robo Brain and the Assaultron Laser, and I think it's whichever one you like. The Assaultron Laser has a cooler looking effect, but it aggro's at a shorter distance, so it's not as long range. The Robo Brain can already attack, and aggro enemies from a long distance in a way you may not want. I think it seems to me that the robot will have like its left hand arm shoot more often than the other one. So you might want to decide that one be the weapon you want, but good weapons would be like the Gatling laser, maybe the explosive minigun, and the missile launcher or the Nuka quantum launcher, I guess.